He proposed to me in front of everyone with a ring from my sister's jewelry box. Turns out they'd been sleeping together for a year, and he just wanted my 200K. So I played their cheating confession over the speakers mid-toast. I hit play without saying a word. That's how this whole thing really started. Me sitting at the center of a long, white tablecloth table in some overpriced restaurant in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, surrounded by people clinking glasses and pretending they actually cared about my happiness. My ex-fiancé, Evan had just finished his toast. He ended it with this smug little line about a future he could finally control, and everyone laughed like it was charming instead of chilling. My mom shot me that tight smile she always used when she thought I might cause a scene, the one that basically said, "Don't you dare ruin this for me." My sister, Jenna, was across the table wearing my old date night dress, a dress she once mocked for being plain. She had the nerve to smirk at me every time our eyes met, like she already knew the whole night was locked in her favor. They didn't know what I had in my purse. They didn't know I'd already heard them. Because earlier that afternoon, hours before Evan got on one knee with the ring I didn't know he stole from Jenna's jewelry box, I'd walked into my sister's condo looking for her, hoping maybe she'd help me pick out nail polish before the big dinner. Instead, I ended up hearing their voices echoing down the hall from her bedroom. At first I thought it was the TV. Then I recognized their laughs, his low and fake smooth, hers sharp and eager. I shouldn't have listened. But I did. I stood there frozen, my phone in my hand, and when I heard Jenna say, "Does she know the ring is mine?" Something in me cracked open. I hit record without thinking. I don't even remember deciding to do it. It just happened. The things they said, God. A year. They'd been sleeping together for a year. A whole damn year of them sneaking around behind my back while I was busy trying to build something real with him. And then the worst part. Evan saying he needed to lock things down with me now that I had money worth committing to. Money worth committing to. That was what I was to him. A safe bet. A bank account. Stability with legs. By the time he proposed at the botanical garden, on one knee, camera phones everywhere, my mom crying like it was a movie, I felt sick but numb. It didn't even feel real. I said yes because I needed time. I needed to breathe. I needed to make sure I wasn't imagining the whole thing. But now here we were, at the engagement dinner, and he leaned in close, smiling like a man proud of his trophy, and whispered in my ear, "Don't screw this up. You're the safe one, the one I can control." Jenna watched me again, that same damn smirk. I realized then that they both thought I'd break quietly, that I'd let it go, that I'd be too ashamed to fight back, because my mother already begged me not to embarrass the family. So I reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. And without clearing my throat or tapping my glass or making some dramatic announcement, I just pressed play, loud enough for every single person within 20 feet to hear the exact moment my fiancé admitted he was only proposing because of my inheritance. The restaurant fell dead silent. Forks froze midair. My mom's face drained. Evan's smile collapsed into something wild and panicked. Jenna sat still for the first time all night. And as their voices spilled into the room, raw and damning, I looked around at everyone staring at me, waiting for what I'd do next. But they had no idea this was only the beginning. Before everything blew up at that dinner table, before I knew who Evan and Jenna really were, my life honestly felt stable. Not exciting, not perfect, just steady in a way I thought I deserved after years of scraping through whatever mess my family created. I grew up in Gastonia, not far from Charlotte. My parents fought constantly, loud, dramatic fights that always ended with my mom blaming me or Jenna for setting her off. Jenna was the golden child, the one who knew how to twist herself into whatever shape our parents wanted. I was the one who tried to stay quiet, stay helpful, stay out of the blast zone. It didn't matter. My mom still found ways to make me feel like existing was an inconvenience. Jenna learned early that charm was currency. She knew how to smile at the right time, how to tilt her head like she cared, how to act innocent even when she was the one causing the damage. She always got the pretty and confident label, and I got responsible and dependable. Translation. She was the one people loved, and I was the one people expected things from. When our grandmother passed away last year, she left me the inheritance, not Jenna. My grandma always said I was the one who actually visited, actually helped, actually showed up. Jenna barely called her. But to my family, that inheritance should have gone to the successful sister, the one who made everything look good from the outside. Even though Grandma's will was clear, my mother still asked me, 3 times, if I'd consider splitting it to keep the peace. I said no every time. Then came Evan. I met him at a friend's housewarming party. He was charming in this almost too perfect way, clean cut, big smile, the kind of guy who complimented everyone in the room just enough that no one could say a bad word about him. He introduced himself to me like he already knew I'd say yes to whatever he wanted. And I did. Because after years of quiet loneliness, having someone look at me like I mattered felt intoxicating. Our first date was simple burgers and a walk through Freedom Park. I wore that blue dress Jenna later wore to the engagement dinner. When she saw it that first night, she rolled her eyes and said it was cute in a small-town way. I didn't care. Evan said I looked beautiful, or at least I thought he meant it. Looking back, I can see the patterns. The way he always asked about my job, my plans, my savings. The way he talked about building a life while never actually opening up about his own past. The way he gravitated toward Jenna at family gatherings a little too easily, like they already had a rhythm between them. I caught them in small lies, nothing dramatic enough to accuse anyone of anything. A weird inside joke they had. A text from him that accidentally called me by her nickname. A moment where she fixed his collar like she'd done it before. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself they were just friendly. I told myself that my family had messed with my head enough that I didn't know how to feel secure. Then Grandma died. Then the inheritance came. And suddenly Evan was talking about marriage like it was urgent, like he needed to lock down our future before life gets hectic. Those were his words. I didn't question them. I thought he just loved me. Now I know better. By the time I heard them whispering in Jenna's bedroom, it didn't even shock me. It just confirmed the ugly mix of dread and suspicion I'd been swallowing for months. But that day, earlier, before the dinner, before the recording, before everything blew open, I told myself one thing: if they think I'm weak, let them think it. It only makes what comes next more satisfying. After I recorded that conversation in Jenna's condo, I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just walked out quietly, like someone leaving a room full of strangers. My hands were shaking the whole drive home, but my mind was weirdly calm, almost too calm. That calm you feel right before a big storm hits. I sat in my apartment for over an hour, listening to the recording again and again. Hearing Evan laugh with her. Hearing Jenna say she deserved him more because she was more fun. Hearing Evan say he couldn't date her publicly because she'd blow the money. Hearing him call me a sure thing, a stable investment, a guaranteed future. Every time I listened, something in me hardened. When my mom texted me reminding me not to be late for the engagement dinner, she added, "And please, don't start anything with your sister." Like I was the problem. Like I was the one who needed to be controlled. That's when something clicked. It wasn't just Evan and Jenna who underestimated me, it was my whole family. They expected me to swallow everything quietly because that's what I'd always done. So I let the night play out. I let Evan propose in front of everyone. I let the cameras flash and the strangers cheer. I let Jenna stand there pretending to cry from joy. I let my mom sob into her hands like she was witnessing something holy. I let Evan slide that stolen ring, her ring, onto my finger while my stomach turned. I smiled in every picture. I said yes with a steady voice, but inside I was already planning. By the time we got to the engagement dinner, I felt like I was watching a movie of my own life, like none of it was happening to me. Everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, how perfect we were together, how mature I'd become. It all felt like noise. Then things escalated fast. The moment we sat down, Jenna immediately started controlling the room, ordering wine, telling stories about Evan from before they met me, touching his arm too casually, making comments that were almost inside jokes but not quite. I watched her play the role she thought she deserved. Evan, meanwhile, kept squeezing my hand under the table in this weird, possessive way, like he was reminding me who held the power. Every time someone complimented the ring, Jenna's eyes flicked toward me with this sick pleasure, like she was waiting to see if I'd break. Then came the toast. Evan stood, tapping his glass like he was about to deliver the speech of the decade. He talked about commitment, about certainty, about how some people don't understand the value of a stable partner. He said all that while staring directly at me, like he was warning me. People nodded along. My mom dabbed her eyes. Then he added that line, the one that flipped a switch in me, to a future I can finally control. He looked right at me as he said it, smiling, confident, arrogant, absolutely sure I wouldn't dare ruin his moment. And Jenna. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs, and whispered to my mom, "He's perfect for her." They both laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with a cheating fiancé and a jealous sister. I was dealing with a whole family who thought I'd always stay quiet no matter how badly they hurt me. I realized they had no idea who I actually was, and they were about to find out. When the recording started playing at the dinner table, I expected shock. I expected yelling. I expected my mom to gasp and clutch her pearls like she always did when anything went off script. But I did not expect what actually happened. Because instead of denying it, instead of scrambling, instead of apologizing or pretending it was taken out of context, Evan just went still. His whole face drained, not with guilt but with calculation, like he was already strategizing his way out. Jenna reacted first. She shot up from her chair, eyes wide, face flushed, and snapped, "Turn that off!" Her voice cracked. Not from shame, from panic. Real panic. The kind of panic you feel when you realize you're about to lose more than just a relationship. Everyone else stared at her like she just confessed without meaning to. My mom leaned toward me, whispering urgently, "Stop this. We'll handle it privately. Don't embarrass us." Because, of course, the family reputation mattered more than my humiliation. But I didn't stop the recording. It kept playing the part where Evan said he'd never date Jenna publicly because she'd burn through the inheritance faster than she could fake cry about it. That one hit like a bomb. Jenna grabbed a wine glass and threw it at the wall behind me. People gasped. A server ducked. My mom covered her face like I was the one making a scene, but here's where everything twisted, hard. Right as the recording reached the part where Evan called me a safe bet, Jenna suddenly turned on him. Harder than she ever turned on me. She pointed at Evan and yelled, "You said you loved me. You said we'd leave her as soon as the money transferred. Don't act innocent now." The whole table froze. That was the moment everything reversed. Because I hadn't known that part. I knew they slept together. I knew he used me. I knew they were pieces of garbage who thought they were smarter than me. But I didn't know they actually had a plan. I didn't know Evan was going to marry me, take control of the inheritance, and then dump me for her. They weren't just cheating, they were trying to build a whole future together using my money. And the way Jenna said it, loud, furious, desperate, made it obvious she thought she deserved that future. Evan's mask slipped completely. He turned on her with this cold, flat voice and said, "You were never supposed to say that out loud." Out loud. Like the problem wasn't the plan, just the fact that she exposed it. People around us gasped. A couple sitting at a nearby table actually stood up like they were watching a courtroom meltdown instead of a dinner. But the worst moment came next. My dad, who had been quiet and tense the whole night, looked across the table at my mom and said, "Did you know about this?" And without skipping a beat, my mom said, "I suspected." Suspected. She suspected my fiancé was sleeping with my sister. She suspected he was using me. And she kept her mouth shut because the idea of a picture-perfect engagement meant more to her than my dignity. That hit me harder than anything else that night. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Everybody suddenly started talking over each other, accusations, excuses, denials, crying, shouting. Evan grabbed my wrist and hissed, "Don't make this worse." Jenna screamed at him for using her too. My mom ordered me to cut it out now. My dad kept saying, "I can't believe this," over and over. The room was chaos. But inside me, there was only clarity. Because I suddenly realized something huge. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was an operation. A coordinated, calculated plan to turn me into the quiet, obedient foundation of a life they wanted to build without me. They weren't messy cheaters. They were conspirators. And they had no idea I had already started planning my own counterattack. The thing about having your whole life explode in public is that, after the shock wears off, something cold and sharp settles in. That's what happened to me as I sat in that restaurant watching the people who were supposed to love me argue over who betrayed me less. Evan kept whispering threats. Jenna kept crying in that ugly, high-pitched way she saved for moments she wanted attention. My mom kept insisting we fix this privately. My dad kept shaking his head like he'd just woken up from a coma. But me, I stayed quiet. Because quiet is the one thing they always misread. While the restaurant employees huddled in the corner deciding whether to throw us out, I already knew exactly what I needed to do. Revenge doesn't come from rage. It comes from calm, from seeing the board clearly, from understanding that once someone shows you who they really are, you don't fight them back in the same language. They don't deserve that. You dismantle them instead. First step, get out clean. No scenes, no tears, no apologies. I pulled my wrist out of Evan's grip and stood up. I remember the look on his face, confusion mixed with fear. He thought I was walking away to regroup. He thought the worst I'd do was call off the engagement. He didn't realize I was already calculating how to tear down everything he and Jenna had been building behind my back. I told the table I'm done and walked out. No drama, just silence. The kind of silence that scares people who know they've gone too far. I drove home, locked the door behind me, and replayed the entire night in my head. Every detail, every angle, every weakness. I made tea not because I wanted it, but because having something warm in my hands grounded me enough to think. I wrote down a list. 1. Break the engagement officially. Not privately. Not quietly, legally and publicly. 2. Expose them without involving emotion, only evidence. The recording was just the start. I had texts, photos, dates that overlapped, receipts. All the things I'd ignored now became weapons. 3. Protect the inheritance. I called my attorney the next morning. I told him everything. He didn't even sound surprised. Apparently schemes like this happen more than anyone admits. He started the process of securing the funds in a way no future partner could access without my explicit written consent. 4. Hit Evan where it hurts. His job, his reputation, his plans. I already knew his company valued family values and public image. He'd bragged about it enough. I didn't have to smear him, just show them the truth. 5. Hit Jenna where it hurts more. Her social image, her dating life. Her desperate need to be admired. She lived on attention like oxygen. Cutting that off would be cleaner than any confrontation. 6. Leave a final blow for my mother. Not revenge, just boundaries so sharp they'd feel like steel walls. She would never get to weaponize my silence again. The more I planned, the calmer I felt. By the second day, I had everything lined up, emails drafted, evidence organized, meetings scheduled. The strategy was so airtight that even if they tried to twist the story, nothing would save them. But then something happened I didn't plan. Something I didn't see coming. A twist I didn't even know existed. On the third night, as I was organizing the timeline of their affair, I found something buried in Evan's old messages. A thread he must have forgotten to delete. A message that didn't sound like Jenna at all. A message that hinted that the betrayal ran deeper, and the real reason behind everything had almost nothing to do with love or lust, and everything to do with me. I found it by accident. I was digging through Evan's old messages, trying to build a clean timeline of cheating receipts. Nothing fancy, just enough to prove motive and intent if anything ever got legal. Most of the texts between him and Jenna were exactly what I expected. Sneaking around, inside jokes, complaints about me, plans for after the inheritance transferred. Trash. But then I opened a message thread that wasn't labeled with a name, just a number. And the tone was completely different. No flirting, no innuendos, no emojis, just strategy, cold, business-like strategy. The earliest message was from months before my grandmother died, before the inheritance, before Evan ever mentioned engagement. The message said, "You're sure she's the one with access?" I remember staring at it, confused. At first I assumed it was about the money, but this was sent before the money even existed. Then Evan replied, "Yes, her family listens to her more than they realize. Easy in." Easy in? Easy into what? My stomach tightened. I scrolled further. Another message from the number. "If you can keep the sister close, even better. It keeps pressure off." Keep the sister close? Then Evan replied, "Already done. She's eager for attention." That was the first moment I realized something was wrong in a completely different way. This wasn't a cheating thread. This wasn't a flirtation. This wasn't even personal. This looked like coordination. But with who? I scrolled farther. There were references to the deal, the deadline, and something called the transfer. Not the inheritance transfer. This was months before that. The messages were vague, but not vague enough to hide the truth. Whoever Evan was talking to wasn't a friend, wasn't a coworker, wasn't a relative, it was someone he was reporting to. My chest went cold. I kept reading. Then I hit the part that snapped everything into focus. Number, once you're in, she'll listen. She does anything to feel chosen. Evan, I'll push the stability angle. She falls for that. My hands literally shook. They weren't talking about love. They were talking about me as a vulnerability, a target. And then the worst one, number, when it happens, make sure the sister is involved. Chaos keeps her isolated. Evan, already setting that up. Chaos keeps her isolated. They weren't sleeping together because of some spontaneous spark. They weren't even doing it because of the money. They were doing it because someone wanted me destabilized, and Evan volunteered to be the weapon. But I still didn't know who the hell the other person was until I scrolled all the way to the top of the thread and saw the area code. My father's business partner. The man I'd grown up calling Uncle Rick. The man who always lingered too long when he hugged me. The man who always told me I was the sensible one. The man who once joked that I was the only person in this family worth investing in. My dad and him had a falling out years ago about money that mysteriously went missing, and my dad had always insisted Rick had nothing to do with it. But the area code matched, the writing style matched, the motives matched. I felt a cold wave wash through me. Evan didn't just find me, he was placed, handpicked, recruited, inserted into my life. And Jenna unknowingly fell into the perfect role, keeping me insecure, overwhelmed, distracted. I wasn't dealing with a cheating fiancé. I was dealing with a setup. A long-term manipulation engineered by someone who saw me as a tool in a family feud that started long before I ever knew about it. The puzzle snapped into place like a slap, and suddenly the revenge I had planned wasn't nearly big enough. Not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I just sat on my living room floor in the dark with my laptop open, reading that message thread until the words blurred. I kept asking myself the same question. Why me? Why would Uncle Rick, someone who'd known me since I was little, someone who used to give me birthday cards with $50 bills inside, go this far? Why recruit Evan? Why involve Jenna? Why orchestrate a whole relationship just to isolate me? By sunrise, I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed answers. So I went to confront the one person who might actually tell me the truth, my dad. He was in the garage when I got there, sorting through old tools like he was trying to keep his hands busy. He looked exhausted, older than he had at the dinner. When he saw me, he didn't say hi. He just said, I wondered when you'd come. I didn't ease into it. Did you know Evan was working with Rick? He froze, completely. And that silence told me more than any confession could. I didn't scream, I didn't accuse, I just waited. Finally, my dad sat down on the workbench and rubbed his face. There are things you don't know about your grandmother's estate, he said slowly. Things I didn't want dragging you in. I felt my whole stomach drop. He told me everything. Years ago, long before Grandma got sick, Rick had convinced my dad to invest in some guaranteed return real estate plan. My dad trusted him. They'd been friends since college. But the plan turned out to be a way for Rick to siphon money. Not just a little, hundreds of thousands. Money my dad couldn't legally prove he lost because he'd signed things he didn't fully read. My dad covered it up. Remortgaged the house. Took loans. Spent years crawling out of the hole. He hid it from all of us because he was ashamed. And then Grandma's will surfaced. My inheritance. Money Rick must have heard about through someone, maybe a lawyer, maybe an accountant. Someone who mentioned that Grandma had left a sizable amount directly to me. Not to the family. Not to be distributed. Directly to me. That meant Rick couldn't touch it through my dad. But he could through someone I married. Someone who could advise me. Someone who could help me invest. Someone who could access joint accounts. Someone who could convince me to put the money to good use. He placed Evan in my life because Evan was exactly the kind of man who would sell his soul if the price was right. Rick promised him a cut, promised him connections, promised him an easy future. And Jenna, my dad swallowed hard. Rick told Evan that getting close to Jenna would keep you off balance. If you felt inferior, you'd cling harder to him. You'd be easier to guide. I didn't even know how to react. My sister wasn't some villain mastermind, she was bait. Manipulated because she was jealous, insecure, and eager for validation. Evan played her perfectly, and she fell right into it. But the part that hit the hardest was when my dad whispered, Rick said you were the ideal target because you want to be chosen. Because you confuse stability with love. Because you don't make noise. Not emotional, not poetic, just brutally matter of fact. That was the cold truth behind everything. It wasn't about passion. It wasn't about cheating. It wasn't even about the inheritance. It was about control. Rick saw me as the weak link in my family's armor, the quiet one, the predictable one, the one who wouldn't fight back until it was too late. He thought I was the safest person to break. Hearing that didn't make me cry. It made me dangerous. Because if their entire plan relied on me being quiet, then destroying them would start with being the loudest I had ever been. I didn't rush my revenge. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't broken. I was methodical. Because if they built a whole operation around the idea that I was weak and quiet, then the most powerful thing I could do was tear down every single one of them with a calm, steady hand. I sent the recordings, screenshots, and message threads, not to him, not to my family, to his company's HR department. I didn't add commentary, no dramatic paragraphs, just a simple note. This employee has been using his position to orchestrate fraudulent financial schemes tied to my inheritance. Attached are the documents. By noon, he was suspended. By late afternoon, he was fired. I found out through a frantic voicemail he left me, begging to talk like adults because I misunderstood everything. I deleted it without listening to the end. I didn't confront her. I didn't block her. I didn't scream at her. Instead, I posted one thing to Facebook, a single screenshot of her screaming at Evan in the restaurant. "You said we'd leave her as soon as the money transferred." I didn't tag anyone, didn't add a caption, didn't defend myself. I just let the comment section do what it was always going to do. Her friends turned on her fast. People she respected asked her publicly if she was okay. Her situationship, she always had at least one, blocked her immediately. Her image, the thing she worshipped, collapsed in real time. She tried calling me 12 times that night. I didn't answer a single one. For the first time in my life, I set a boundary she couldn't manipulate. I texted her. "I'm done letting your fear of embarrassment dictate my life. You covered for them. Don't contact me until you're ready to take responsibility for that." She wrote back paragraphs. Guilt, excuses, deflection. I muted her. Not blocked, muted. A quiet punishment, but effective. The next day my dad called and said she'd barely gotten out of bed. I didn't enjoy hearing that, but I didn't soften either. I wasn't going to bend this time. I saved him for last. I forwarded the entire message thread, every calculated line, every instruction he gave Evan to my father. Not because I wanted my dad to hurt, but because he needed to finally see who Rick actually was. He read them, went silent for a long time, and then told me he had a lawyer friend ready to help him explore charges and restitution. But I didn't stop there. I sent the same thread to Rick's wife, then to his board of directors, then to the accountant he stole money from years ago. His entire professional world ignited instantly. I didn't even have to follow up. The evidence spoke for itself. Evan's messages exposed everything. His fraud, his manipulation, his involvement in trying to regain access to funds he'd stolen before. The next morning, my dad texted me. "Rick resigned. His wife left him. His partners are pressing charges." Good. I protected the inheritance, sealed it behind legal safeguards that made it impossible for anyone, family, spouse, partner, whoever, to touch without my approval. I signed up for therapy. I cut contact with Jenna and kept minimal, firm communication with my mother. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding my apartment into something that actually felt like mine again. The best part. Evan tried to show up at my place once, just once. I opened the door, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "I'm not your safe bet anymore." Then I closed the door and locked it. Closure. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was exact, surgical, the kind of justice people like Rick and Evan never see coming because they underestimate the quiet ones. I didn't get my happy ending with a man. I got something better. Myself, uncontrolled, unchosen, unbroken, and finally loud. Witty kicker line. Turns out the safest bet in the room was the one who learned how to play the game better than all of them.